Hello there. Welcome to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. All of us here wearing beige color shirts and hoodies are glad to host today's episode. And we are on the part 2 of a conversation on youth ministry and missions. I am Terrence Shay, the family pastor at FCBC Walnut in Southern California. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves once again to our beloved audience, starting with Huey, and with the answer to this question. What is a travel hack or 2 or 3 that you would want to share with our audience today?
Wow, I'm sure Dorothy has 2 or 3. I'm just
1,000.
But hey, Rooted family, what's going on, everybody? My name is Huey, and I currently serve on staff at Christ Central Presbyterian Church in Centerville, Virginia. Good to be here with you guys talking about missions again. And my only one travel hack is getting yourself the Capital One Venture X credit card.
Wow.
I actually
show me that number again, Huey. Show me that number again.
Hey, not the number, but just get the card, get your own. I really love the lounge access they provide, so that's a good one.
Hey, whenever you need a friend for that lounge access, Huey, I'm here, man. I'm here.
Actually, it expires next month.
Yeah.
Meaning, they changed the deal where if you bring a guest, I think there's a fee now.
No.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Too crowded.
Yeah, I think it's too crowded. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Dorothy and I'm the youth director at the Chinese Bible Church of Maryland in Rockville, Maryland. Been here for just over 7 years now, but slowly offboarding as well. If you want to know more, you can talk to me personally at the Rooted Conference in October.
Nice.
Wow.
A shameless plug. Anyways, but before you get to the Rooted Conference, you need some travel hacks. So mine are just one or 2 to 3, I don't know. My main one is whenever I book a flight or a hotel, for the flights, I tend to check anywhere between Tuesdays through Thursdays for low prices. And for hotels, they're best on Saturdays and Sundays and sometimes Mondays. I don't know what it is, but that's just where I've seen the prices tend to be the lowest.
Wow.
And whenever I book, at least for hotels, make sure it is just you're booking to reserve and it's inconsequential to cancel at any time, because if you pay a prepay rate, chances are the prices could drop, and if it's non-refundable, then you might lose out on paying an even cheaper price later. So you can rebook inconsequentially, same itinerary, just rebook the same room as long as it's available. Maybe AAA discount if you have that. For flights, same thing, you can rebook with the airline directly and get the difference back in travel credit, depending on if you paid without a refund or if you paid a rate that was refundable, then you could get a refund. So yeah.
Wow, that's very good.
Yeah, so you don't have to spend $400 on a flight, because if you check it maybe on a random Tuesday through Thursday or sometimes on a Saturday night, I don't know, they might have dropped the prices, and then you can just rebook the same itinerary and get the difference back in travel credit or maybe a refund, depending on what tier you booked.
Wow.
Yeah, don't let these greedy airlines already take more of your money. Find ways to save your money.
This is Dorothy's side hustle. She's going to be a travel agent.
Oh,
No.
for sure. She really should be.
I want to do
Yeah.
some
Well,
travels, but I don't want to pay for it that much.
Yeah, I mean, we were brainstorming about this during our preparation. I'm like, dude, none of us have as many travel hacks as Dorothy.
Yeah.
So sharing 2 or 3, this is not enough for her. And for me, I had to kind of scrounge a little bit. But I will share one thing. It's because sometimes you have layovers. And I personally hate being at the airport. Some people love it. I don't. I just really want to get there with as much time as it is needed to not rush, to get in line, and to get on board. So get some kind of app that helps to track your flight. That's useful. A lot of times throughout the day, it changes. There's been here and there a lot of delays and just rerouting of things. And so if you kind of just check in the morning and check a few hours before where your flight is, then you're able to have a peace of mind. And sometimes what usually happens is that there's a delay. And so you don't have to rush. You have a little bit more time. You can hang out with your friends a little bit longer. You get that extra cup of coffee. You could do something productive and not waste your time at the airport. So that's my travel hack. All right, so it's funny that we're talking about travel hacks because we're talking about missions and locally and globally, and even we joked around the last episode about how missions is not vacation. So it's funny that we're bringing up travel hacks as a connection. But this episode, then we want to talk a little bit more from the perspective of equipping and also leadership of missions trips or missions endeavors with youth that then hopefully would be helpful and also insightful for you all, including ourselves. And so the first question I'm going to ask for Dorothy to answer first is, what are some of your personal experiences as it relates to missions, whether it's like resources or maybe conferences that you've attended, people that you've heard that have really shaped you or made an impact on you as it relates to this particular aspect of ministry?
Yeah, for sure. I remember participating on 2 mission trips in college. One of them was with Service Over Self based out of Memphis, Tennessee. And a second one was in the city of Chicago with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And they did a program called the Chicago Urban Plunge. And I'm not sure if that's still happening now, but basically it was like an alternative spring break in which our InterVarsity chapter partnered with, this is like another, I think, branch within InterVarsity as they operate as a ministry. You can go into the inner city neighborhoods, and for the week of your spring break, it's participate with serving a lower income neighborhood, again, with a partnering organization. So those are 2 trips I think that were really eye-opening for me. One, in the sense that there are people, who exist out there who are not like us, but at the same time, even if they've heard of the gospel or heard of Jesus or been exposed to church, there's sometimes the sense of hopelessness that the common person, at least in North America, may feel. Like they could have everything and still feel hopeless. They could have nothing, still feel hopeless, or at the same time have just enough but have so much joy. And encountering people who served in these organizations, or they served people who were more so needy, maybe by their basic needs, it does highlight how much of God's heart you can see in these organizations and those who operate them for their local communities, for broken families, for underserved people groups in urban areas. So that really attuned to me, like, what does it mean to actually have a heart of compassion for God's people, or people whom God has created in his image? And instead of assuming certain things about people groups based on cultural and cultural assumptions and expectations because I've grown up in a certain part of a city. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, I know recently too that you had just gone to a missions conference called Urbana, which is pretty famous amongst
yes.
our circles, and so love to hear a little bit more about some of your insights there and what you saw and what you heard.
Yeah, for sure. So that was, by God's grace, the 3rd time I've ever attended Urbana. Once as a freshman in college, again as a senior in college. And you may think, oh, why is there a 3-year break? And for those who might be unfamiliar with the Urbana Student Missions Conference, it happens once every 3 years. So if ever you're deciding, should I go to this conference, that conference, or Urbana, I would really recommend and challenge that students, college students or high school seniors, particularly consider Urbana, because it widened my understanding and scope of what is God doing in the world and what does global Christianity really look like. The missions conference itself, yes, it is still branded as a student missions conference because historically they have been such a commissioning body. Before a number of other student conferences, Christian conferences have emerged, Urbana has been going on for about 80 years now. And I know several people who have become very influential in their local churches because of their Urbana experience. And that's something I'm not sure we could say of, again, other student Christian conferences that are of a particular focus or theological alignment. Not to discount them by any means, but Urbana is like a glimpse of heaven because you see Christians from around the world who are there. In terms of resources, though, like the conference has an exhibition hall, or this time they called it a mobilization hub, which is neat nomenclature, just because it's saying like you can connect with any of these groups and organizations organizations to see if there's a possibility that you can join one of the endeavors that they may have. Would be a trip or a project, or see if they're on your campus. And or if you're considering, how do I use my education for God's kingdom, there are spaces that really want to delve into that. So if we're considering, how do we even incorporate this in youth ministry, for sure, if you're a high school senior, you're trying to figure out what you want to do for college, like this could be a space for those students to join Urbana to get a glimpse of it, and then reconsider that instead of picking a college major that is purely for the lucrativeness or because your parents said so or for other motivations. It's, again, an eye-opening experience to see how can God use me and the way that he has created me for his kingdom. And that's an incredible experience and very humbling to be in amidst thousands. This year there's like 7,000 some students, which is a smaller scale. I remember going and there's like 15 to 18,000. But needless to say, it's a once in a lifetime experience and something to see and witness at a very specific point in your life. So going as an adult versus going as a college student, it felt nostalgic, but it also still felt like God was prompting or refining me in a different area of my life now as a middle-aged person.
Middle-aged? Is that what you call yourself? No
I
way,
don't
man.
know. I mean, the kids look at me and they're like, how old are you really? I'm like, you think I'm lying to you?
You know what? Everyone is an unk after like 25, I feel like. That's
No, I'm an
what the
aunt
kids think.
now.
Yes, an aunt. Yes, that's very, very appropriate. Yeah.
We are thrilled to announce Rooted's new book with New Growth Press, The Jesus I Wish I Knew in High School, Asian American Edition. Being a teenager is itself an overwhelming experience, but the struggles unique to Asian American teenagers can often lead them to wonder if anyone truly knows what they're going through. In this book, 12 authors come alongside Asian American students to share their own high school experiences, helping students to see how Jesus makes a difference in our unique struggles. Jesus sees them and knows them fully. These testimonies of growing up Asian American include struggles with belonging, performance pressure, fear of failure, living in an honor-shame culture, eating disorders, sexual assault, and adoption. The writers now walk faithfully with Jesus in their ethnic and cultural distinctions. These stories lift up the Asian American experience with dignity, offering representation and belonging. We hope you'll read this book and share it with the Asian American teenagers in your home or church.
No, thanks for sharing that. Urbana has been around forever, and I've always wanted to go, but I think at the time when I had maybe more of a window to go, it was always in the Midwest, and I just never was able to make it out there. So it's one of the things that I always felt like I missed out on, that I never went to in Urbana myself. More recently, our church has been sending people to Cross Conference as well, which is a missions conference. And so, yeah, I'm so glad to hear, what you're able to experience there. So for me, the one resource that I want to share is a pretty seminal book for my thinking and also motivation is John Piper's Let the Nations Be Glad. And it looks old because it is old. And there's like even the sticker from when I bought it from a used bookstore, because I was just a poor college student or something. And what I liked about what Piper had to share was just simply this, that missions is not the end in and of itself, the purpose of our lives, even though we are called to make disciples, but it's God's glory. It's God's reign. It's God's might and power and his worship, everything that he deserves, that when people don't know Christ, they're not giving, they're not surrendered, and they don't know the treasure that is Christ. And so for me, that was just so motivating to see that, wow, it's not just about being busy with missions for the sake of it, or to almost be like a better Christian because you do missions versus you don't, or you're willing to sacrifice your time and your life for a trip when others aren't, or it's, the money or the planning. It's all those things are secondary so that people would hear about Jesus and that they would receive what is the greatest joy of their lives by having a relationship with him and to be with him for eternity, that it's the worship and the glory of God that's ultimate. So yeah, even now that shapes my thinking so much of not seeing anything that we do in the name of missions to be the end of itself, but how is it shaping and impacting our hearts and impacting our students to know and to love Christ more.
That's good. Yeah. Man, as I hear both of you guys kind of share, man, I feel like I've missed out on a lot when I was growing up because I'm pretty sure I knew missions and church missions was a thing, but as I shared in the last episode, I was just not around um, a, a lot of missions experience, or I just wasn't maybe aware of them, maybe. Um, but I do remember going on my very first international missions because I heard somebody else talk about it. So maybe for youth leaders or even just youth students, maybe more of a direct resource might be just people who've gone on missions. I think like as youth leaders and youth workers, it might be really good to have our students around people that have gone missions before and not just kind of hear like 3-4 minute stories of their experience, but maybe a little bit longer versions of the things that people have done, people have seen, and people have gone through. I think that might be sort of rewarding for our students, but also even just for yourself, like just listening to other people's testimonies on the trips and experiences that they've had. I feel like might be a really, really, really good resource because I remember that's kind of sort of how I learned to kind of dream bigger,
Hmm.
right? Or dream differently. Is just hearing a friend of mine or like someone that I go to church with, talk about their experience. Just kind of you catch a vision of that, So that's I feel like that's just kind of how I got connected to missions on a more personal and deeper level.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for sharing. As we think about then our students and whether we are personally involved or just supportive or prayerful for our students being exposed to missions and possibly going and participating, what are some of the insights that you have from a pastoral point of view on how they could be equipped, things to look out for, things to be paying attention to in their hearts and in the culture that we're creating? How can we bring youth ministry and missions together in a helpful way?
hmm I mean, I can go first. I can just kind of suggest one thing first is I think your leadership team makes a huge difference.
Hmm.
The people that come around you to actually, lead the team with you alongside you because you can't really do everything. And I do think your leadership team meets maybe at least a handful of weeks prior to your team being assembled and gathered, and you begin the training with the team itself. Your leadership chemistry and expectations, job description of every person on that leadership team, all of those things I think really matter. And protecting, just having realistic and proper expectations of one another, and having clear boundaries, I think all of that just kind of speaks into just, I feel like the way that your team leads this trip with students is really going to make or break your experience, So um, I think just having just a good leadership team around you is going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I do find that it is super key to train your team
Hmm.
because, particularly with students, even if students have traveled with their families, again, a missions trip is not a vacation. And even then, when teens are traveling with their parents, like their parents probably do most of everything for them. So when we're training for a mission trip, it's really working from the ground up, like remembering this is why you're here, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And in between, filling in some of those logistics and details of like where is lodging going to occur? How do we take care of payments? How do we take care of delegating or divvying responsibilities? And really tempering realistic expectations of how to go about all those things. I think it's also super important to be organized because, heaven forbid that we're thinking about currency exchanges
Hmm.
and who's checking in for whom, who's going to be taking care of purchasing flights, and who's going to handle the funds up front. Are we having to give money to prepare funds to give an organization when we arrive at a certain place. So like there's so many things that happen in between, not to make that feel stifling or intimidating in any way, but this is where having a team is so important and knowing who does what and when and how. One mistake I'll share is that I think when I was in college, I was not as socially aware or just as generally communicative, and I had not yet learned how to be as directly vocal or to know how to state expectations. And so there are some points where I felt frustrated or impatient that some things were not happening because I assumed that they would be happening versus having to prompt or be prompted. I think, again, communication is so important and knowing what we are entrusted with versus what we're assuming what will happen. And oftentimes I've learned if we are making any assumptions, that's more like a prompting to ask and confirm if something is going to happen or not. And then if it's not, who might take responsibility, or do I have the capacity then to take responsibility and to really try to do my part with the team.
Yeah, no, that's a good word. I mean, piggyback off of what you guys were saying, I mean, I think the communication amongst leaders are so important. In a lot of my past experiences, we've led teams with a couple of other partner churches. And so not only it's our students and their students, and they come from different locations, they come from different, schools, even the church culture is different for sure. And so, I've learned through mistakes of maybe assuming that everyone sees things the same way, or that we've done this in the past, that there is no problem too small if it relates to having multiple churches, that we need to talk on the ground. We need to be touching base on a regular basis. So much of my role, if I become the team leader, is not so much doing everything, but is constantly checking in on the other church leaders and the other team leaders who are doing their best, to push the mission forward. But sometimes they might be discouraged with what they see are differences, or what they see are just disagreements, or what they see are like even comments or actions of disrespect. And when you think of students, man, I feel like that's just common, and it's not to justify it, but sometimes, there's some growing up to do all around. And we have that all come to the surface on a mission trip because you're staying in the same place usually. You're with each other all day long. You're sharing meals, sharing bathrooms, sharing chores, and things just come up because we're human and we're selfish and we're sinful. And so the communication with leaders, especially when there's more than one church or more than one group, is definitely key.
Yeah. And I would also add, when it comes to communication, just learning how to lovingly and gently confront prior to going on the trip. Oh my God, it's just so important, right? Because the last thing you want is to have tension and friction and confrontation that you could have dealt with prior to the trip. And again, like that, this goes back to what Dorothy was saying, how training is so important, communication and the conversations that you have with your team leaders is just so important, because you can tell within a short amount of time, like maybe a month or two with your leaders, that, oh, you're actually gonna sort of butt heads with one particular person. Like it's already shown up multiple times. And I think maybe like an Asian thing to do is sort of kind of brush it under the rug and kind of be passive about it. But those things actually like show up in a very sometimes volatile way when you're actually on the field. So like learning how to lovingly and gently confront, again, clearly defining roles and expectations, and clearly laying out some of the boundaries as best as you can before going, I think will make your experience on the field so much better, not just for yourself, but for the students especially.
Hey, Rated family, if you're listening to this podcast, then chances are you're someone who cares deeply about discipling the next generation. Whether you're a youth pastor, volunteer, or a parent in the thick of raising kids, we've got resources designed just for you. At Rooted, we've created curriculum and courses to equip you to walk alongside children and teenagers with confidence, clarity, and the gospel at the center. For youth ministers, we offer inductive Bible studies that keep Jesus front and center in every lesson. With 10 options for year-long studies on books of the Bible, 5 shorter topical studies, and a full scope and sequence, you can map out an entire discipleship plan for students in grades 6 through 12. If you don't know where to start, download our free scope and sequence guide. And we haven't forgotten our parents. Our family discipleship video courses are designed to equip moms and dads from birth through high school, covering everything from basic parenting principles to discipling teens. Use them in small groups, Sunday school, or at home. Whether you're leading from the pulpit or around the dinner table, Rooted's resources are here to support you every step of the way. Head to rootedministry.com and click on Curriculum and Courses to explore more and download your free resources today.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, man, these things, we got to teach them before we go. I mean, if you're trying to like teach them conflict resolution principles when you're already there, it's a little late because by the time something comes up, they're kind of knee deep in it. And so that's such a good word is we got to teach our students and ourselves as leaders when something comes up that we don't like or we don't agree with, or, that requires, some authority to step in, like who's going to be there, who's going to say what, and how do we resolve this in a loving and kind way? That's such a good word.
I will say, especially on that point, and because conflict avoidance or irresolution tends to be rather common in East Asian culture, for some reason, there's a higher potency or likelihood to engage in conflict resolution in a missions trip rather than being at home. I don't know what it is about the atmosphere or just like a semi-hyper spiritualized environment, but if we're not modeling it, then our kids, our students will not know how to actually partake in it. And so many a times as a youth pastor, I know and I expect that I have to take initiative, not because I'm the older person, but because being spiritually a little more mature and farther along also means like I need to be able to demonstrate to these teens what it is to seek healthy relationships with other brothers and sisters in Christ. And if we're not modeling it, then our kids, again, they won't really know how it happens, especially if their parents aren't showing them either, or at least not normatively.
Yeah.
Something else that comes to mind for me, if we're working with a ministry partner in missions, is a lot of times we got to remind the students and ourselves always that we're actually not the main show. It's not all about us. It's not about us getting our plans executed so that we get everything that we want to accomplish checked off. We're going to serve the hosts. We're going to be present and be in the company and to be in the ministry in the lives of a church or a group of churches that are already doing gospel ministry the rest of the year. So we're there maybe for a week. They're staying for the next 51 weeks. And so it's never about us, no matter how good our plans are, no matter how much we bring to the table, how many things we have to offer them. It's not about us. The best work that we can do is actually coming alongside with what God is already doing in their churches, in their families, in their community. And however it is, we could humbly serve and supplement faithfully. That would be the win, because they're staying, we're leaving. It's not about us. And that message never gets old with every single year, because it's easy for us when we think that we're planning and working towards such an important endeavor in the life of the church that, wait, you know what? Let's make sure we do it right. Let's make sure that, we accomplish everything we're supposed to. Let's make sure that we are excellent and it's about us. It's not about us.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one other way that we can sort of foster that spirit of it's not about us is, teaching our students and our team how to make it about the people that have sent that are sending us to, right? People that are praying for us behind the scenes. How do we honor them properly? How do we thank them properly? Not just, the months leading up to the trip, but even after you come back. I think it's appropriate and right for you to come back. Of course, you're going to be exhausted, but come back to write a note of thank you to those that have sponsored you, those that have prayed for you, meeting up with them over a coffee or a meal, just to kind of at least share one or two things that you've learned. I feel like that's another way that you not make it about you and just what you've learned, and you got to give it away, right? Give away to others. And that's another thing that is, I really do think it's part of the whole missions training experience, is that the mission trip doesn't end the moment that you return home. The mission trip actually ends when you have done your due diligence to share with the church what you've learned, or share with like 2 or 3 people that are closest to you what God has taught you in that. I feel like that's sort of the conclusion that sometimes it gets overlooked.
Mm-hmm. That's like the aspect of follow-up, really.
Yeah.
It's following up. That's actually one of my life rules, is like following up and following through. It's like being able to move forward with what you've committed to. And even if that's to share a reflection, like, okay, how does this now impact me moving forward? And if it didn't impact you at all, then perhaps going into that mission trip, we were just going through motions, not really seeking to see how the Lord is speaking or impacting, or we're being challenged and shaped. And I think one of my irrational fears is participating in the mission of God, but feeling entirely unchanged or lack of transformation, even in the smallest sense.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's why I think sometimes I get scared of mission trips, is because it's like, oh Lord, I don't know what you're going to do in my life, but I know it's going to be monumental and I don't know if I'm ready for it. But something I admire for some teens is, there's fewer responsibilities on their plate, but they do have this wider openness to engage with the Lord and to see, like, God, what do you have in store? And I want to experience who you are wherever I am and do whatever I can for your glory. And there's an innocence about that, which maybe it's not widespread. It's just for certain individuals. But either way, I think it's very humbling for me to remember that we need to be like children going to Jesus. And in the same way, seeing God's greater family wherever we go.
That's good.
Yeah. One final thing I'll share, and this relates maybe more toward the students that we send and that we are leading, is adding on to, it's not about us and, the importance, for us to rely on God and to depend on him, is that when they're on the field, it's so important for them to be present. It's easy to be there in a physical space, but they're tempted with all the same things they often are at home. It's their phones and their social media and talking to each other, forming circles that look like, they are leaving people out. And these are not coming from bad places, but these are like the habits that many of us have when we're at home, even at church. And so one of the ways by which I would always constantly be reminding the students is, hey, you're on the field, you're on mission. It's not about you. So, turn yourself outward towards the community, towards the people that are around you. Put your phones down, because it doesn't matter right now. You're not going to miss anything.
And signals
just really pay attention. Yeah, just really pay attention. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the people that are there, why we're setting aside a week and a half, 2 weeks to be there. Make these conversations and relationships count. That's what you're going to take away with you.
Yeah. And I think if we're going to expect that of our students, I think we also need to create space for them to process things, in real time. And, some of our students like really struggle, for students who've never been outside of their own little bubbles, to go to a foreign country, right? And cultures are so different. The way that life is lived and the pace of life is so different. They struggle with either a sense of, pride, or they struggle with a sense of, like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing poverty, like, for example, for the very first time. And they have these real emotions and real doubts. I mean, some students question, like, how can God allow some of these things to happen in these parts of the country? And I think if we're going to really want and expect our students to be present in those moments, we also need to give them space and time to process, like, honestly, and not judge them for the questions or the fears and the doubts that they have, but really understanding that God is bigger and he's at work. We need to invite them to ask difficult questions and show their emotions. How are they actually feeling as they witness certain things? We really have to invite that and not rush that process.
Mhm.
I want to recommend one Rooted resource that you can go on our website and find. It's a podcast that's 10 years old now, but in terms of addressing some of the things that we've talked about, it's mentioned. So the topic is called Common Mistakes in Youth Missions, a conversation with Cameron Cole, Philip Walkley, and Drew Halton, which actually, I believe Phil Walkley is from Service Over Self. So that was the organization that he was representing. So I thought that was really pretty cool that was what Dorothy was connected. Yeah. So feel free to Google that. And, as always, we're really happy and glad to be able to follow up with you personally and getting to know you as we go and as the Lord leads. So with that, thank you for listening today to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. We definitely look forward to our next conversation. And until then, may the Lord bless and keep you as we trust in the death and resurrection of Christ to transform our homes and churches. To find out more about Rooted, please go to our website at rootedministry.com. Be sure to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and even watch us on YouTube. You can follow us, though, on Instagram at The Rooted Ministry. Grateful to journey with you. Happy birthday, Huey.
Thank you, everybody.
Peace.